Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, with Cam Underwood from State of the U. We're here just about each and every Wednesday night at 8:30 Eastern Time talking Miami football. We've got 117 folks on the line, and just imagine this. Imagine if you went out and thought, who loves college football? Because we've got a number of people on the line that are not Miami fans, but I'm guessing 85% of the people are going to be Miami fans. So if you're a Miami fan, and I'm sure you know others, imagine if you grabbed 5 or 10 people and brought them on. We've had as many as 350 on the line a couple weeks ago, probably during the height of the recruiting period, right around National Signing Day. But if you brought those people on, this is about as dead as it's going to get in May. And we build up toward college football season. We could really pack a punch here in the next few months. So help us out. Go out there, tell people that we're here and we deliver the best in Miami football talk. We've got Power Hitter P wanting another question in here, so he has joined in to the Super Chat once again, asking who would the real threat be in the Coastal Division?
I mean, Miami's biggest threat has been themselves. I've said that for years, and I know I sound like a broken record, especially with Miami not backing that up. But actually, I would say that Miami's failings have really backed me up on the fact that Miami is their own biggest enemy. If Miami does what they need to do, nobody else can mess with us. I mean, David Hale, I don't know if he's still at ESPN or not, but he was at ESPN for a time. And he, has his own site, and he was an ACC writer, and he wrote a piece about recruiting and how the talent level of the teams in the ACC is very disparate because your top tier teams on talent. Ooh, one time for that alliteration. Shout out to me. But your top tier teams on talent are Clemson, Miami, and Florida State by far. It's not even close. It's not even like marginal, 9.8 to 8.7. There's a gigantic gulf in talent of these teams. And if you went through that list, Clemson and Florida State are not in the Coastal Division. So there's, by definition, you can go look this piece up, that he wrote, David Hale, I think it's davidmhale.com or net is his website. And he talked about the recruiting numbers in the ACC. There's a gigantic gulf between Miami and everybody else in terms of talent. And that's just on recruiting. That's not even taking into account the fact of all of the transfers that Miami got who are going to play big roles. So no, I don't think that there's any other team that you can look at outside of the team in the mirror if you're a Miami fan, if you're a Miami player, if you're a Miami coach. Because Miami's failings in so many ways over so many years is what has enabled every other team to flourish in the Coastal in that time. Now, if I have to, play by the rules and say, okay, well, you asked me about another team, not Miami. I mean, I guess Virginia Tech? I mean, but they lost like half their program to transfers. I mean, nobody knows who's going to play quarterback for them. I know everybody's talking about Miami's quarterback situation. Their quarterback, who was coming off of a record-setting season and then a solid-ish second year as a redshirt sophomore, who's from Michigan, by the way, he decided, no, I'm going to go to the NFL. I'm going to leave. And everybody's like, well, what? Because we're building everything around you, buddy. And he's like, oh, well, build around somebody else because I'm gone. So, I mean, there are questions on every other team. Mac Brown is trying to rebuild a tire fire in Chapel Hill. Duke is trash rap, and we should blow them out, especially for finding a way with this terrible offense last year to lose to them. Georgia Tech is having a whole-scale paradigm change and scheme shift after being that infernal, cursed triple veer, wishbone, whatever option for all of those years. And then there's somebody else in the Coastal, Virginia, and they're trash, and we shouldn't have lost to them. I'm sorry. And yes, this is me being an arrogant Miami fan. I know this is what people talk about when you say, oh, well, yeah, you guys haven't done anything. That proves my point that the only team that can stand in Miami's way is Miami in the Coastal. And unfortunately for us, who are Miami fans and followers and bloggers, writers, whatever, Miami has succeeded in finding a way to stand in our own way more often than not ever since we joined the ACC. We already know Miami's never won an ACC championship. We've only been to the ACC championship game one time since joining the league. But that's proof of my point. Miami is the team that can stand in Miami's way, not anybody else. And Miami has proven that over the course of time. And Manny Diaz's job and his staff and the players and everybody's job is to not stand in their own way, to play fast, violent, angry, and with precision like Miami Hurricanes. So we don't stub ourselves in the foot. We don't cut off our legs When there's no reason. And again, when you're looking at all these things, I know I already referenced this article about recruiting. When you have guys to the caliber of Amari Carter, Gervin Hall, and Bubba Bolden, there's no reason for a Robert Knowles to be on my field. Period. It's just like there was no reason for AJ Highsmith to ever have played. There's no reason Nantambu Akil Fentress should have been out there. Even Dallas Crawford, who was an all-state safety and was pretty decent, but they kept switching in between running back safety, so it's hard to get any flow. But that's what I'm talking about. Even small decisions like that of playing that guy 200-300 snaps on defense when he shouldn't be playing at all, that's standing in Miami's way. That kind of a thing. Keeping Mark D'Onofrio around for all these years when the offense was rolling and the defense couldn't stop anybody. Mark Richt deciding that he wasn't going to give up play calling and fire his son and moving on to a different direction. And I know that would have precipitated having to fire or let go Thomas Brown also, who's the named offensive coordinator. There's been instance after instance after instance of Miami standing in their own way. And I think that I've long held this belief, and I think that the proof is in the pudding. Miami is the team that can stand in Miami's way. And that's my answer.
I'm the outsider here. Here's my perspective is that for about a 10-year period, and I know this precedes the ACC and goes back to the Big East, but we still have the two same programs involved, that from about 1995, Virginia Tech had a breakout year. They beat Texas in the Sugar Bowl, and that was the emergence of Frank Beamer really lifting that program. From about that time, for about 10 years, Virginia Tech was extremely good. They were a top 10 program almost every season from about 1995 to about 2005. And then they started to slip. They became more of a top 25 program. They have been the biggest threat to Miami football over the last 20 to 25 years consistently. And they have not consistently had as good a talent, but they have on the field been the best program outside of Miami and sometimes better than Miami. They've been the best program again, in recent football memory in that division, if we're looking at that collection of teams, whether they were in the Big East at the time or now the ACC. Other than that, you've got a collection of schools that have taken turns at being decent, but have generally been winning between 5 and 8 games. Pitt, Georgia Tech, Virginia, take any of those schools, North Carolina, Duke. Duke has been much better the last half of David Cutcliffe's tenure than the first half. They were abysmal for about 5 years under him, and he's brought them to a level of respectability where they win 6 or 7 games, sometimes 8, made an ACC championship game in 2013. But those teams, you grab any of those teams and look at the records, look at the recruiting rankings, and you will see just a glut of mediocrity, slightly better than a lot of recruiting classes that rank somewhere between 30 and 55, and a lot of records that go bounce up and down between 7-5 and 6-6 and 8-4 and 5-7 for all those teams. For Miami, they have had a top 15 roster for quite a long time, and especially here in the last 4 to 5 years. And listen to these recruiting rankings. So I did a study here that prepped me for a number of videos. Listen to these recruiting rankings. This does not take into account 2019 because I collected this information before the last recruiting class was signed. Virginia, these are the last 5 recruiting classes. I wanted to outline what we currently see on this team's roster. For Virginia, 59, 58, 63, 50, 33. Pitt, 46, 37, 30, 46, 44. Virginia Tech, a little bit better, 24, 26, 42, 29, 28. Duke, 63, 47, 33, 52, 61. North Carolina, again, we talked about this a couple months ago. Surprisingly, because of the abysmal record, surprisingly, North Carolina, 20, 29, 32, 28, 30. Georgia Tech, 54, 48, 60, 44, 54. Miami, you heard all those numbers. A lot of 50s and 60s and 40s. Miami, 8, 12, 22, 27, 12. It's not close.
Right. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I mean, even in a bad recruiting year, the floor was 27. And that's not even getting into some of the names from those years. And I mean, I'm not going to go look it up now, but I mean, I'm sure we can go back into the names. And like, I know that there's this, I mean, there's a Miami bias in recruiting. There just is. I mean, guys like Joe Jackson, he should have been a 5-star. recruit. He was a 4-star because he committed early and he didn't take any visits or anything like that. Michael Pinckney, I don't know how he was only a 3-star, but that guy's been honorable mention All ACC for 2 years. He should have probably been, second team All ACC one of those years. And like there's guys who overperform their station in recruiting. But again, the baseline floor for Miami's recruiting of talent in a given year is at or above the ceiling for any other team in the division. Like there's 2 12s and an 8 in the last 5 years for Miami in recruiting. Like nobody else had higher than like 24, like for any one given year, let alone a top 10, that could have been top 5 if that broke. Miami is the team that can stand in Miami's way. And yeah, I know that guys go to college and they develop over time and they get better and, guys play well. You had the Thornhill kid from Virginia and you had, the Mark Fields kid from Duke. Yeah. But that's one dude. You want to talk about all the guys Miami has? You know what I mean? And it's just, the previous regime 2 regimes ago with Al Golden, they did numbers on offense and couldn't stop anybody. They couldn't stop toddlers, from moving down the field. You flip that around with a championship caliber defense. And I cannot wait until Bill Connolly, my SB Nation, he's a full-time SB Nation writer, but he does great analytic stuff and he's doing his previews and everything. And I saw he already posted the web kind of statistical map for Miami's defense. And you cannot look at that footprint for the success rates and everything that Miami did on defense and think that's anything other than championship caliber, except for the offense pissed it away. Like it has been a different side of the ball, or for whatever reason, playing guys and not playing guys and making these decisions and But Miami is the team that has been in Miami's way, and that is the team that can stand in Miami's way. And if Miami does what Miami needs to do, nobody in the Coastal can mess with us. And that's just a verifiable, proven fact. And again, it's only been the one time that Miami has actually played to that ability in 2017. But the absence of that level of play, the fact that they have stood in their way, their own way, Miami's own way, for so many years proves the point. Miami needs to do what Miami needs to do, even if it's by smoke and mirrors like it was in 2017, or if it's blowing people out by 50 a game like it was in 2000. Miami is the team that can hold Miami back, and I hope to the good Lord that this year they do not succeed in doing so, and we actually see greatness again, or going towards that way. 11-1, 10-2. Maybe a 9-3 with a bad bounce or something like that. You know what I mean? But no, the team that stands in the way that could stand in the way of Miami is Miami. Nobody in the Coastal has a single player that frightens me at all. I mean, you can take that, you can clip it, GIF it, meme it, whatever you want to do, but there's just not.
So if we frame those stats another way, we can put it this way. There are 6 other teams in the Coastal. I looked at 5 recruiting classes. That's 30 recruiting classes. If you take Miami's worst, there are 3 out of 30 recruiting classes that are better than Miami's worst class in 5 years.
So don't talk to me about another team having the requisite talent to beat Miami in the Coastal Division. That quite simply does not exist. I mean, with 1/10 of the collective recruiting classes outside of Miami's was better than Miami's worst in the last. Let's go on to the next question because I'm just going to keep repeating this.